So it's day 15, and the prompt is journey.
No, I fear I must stop you here, dear viewers. You have been the victim of a scurrilous deception, and it's quite appropriate, really, because the prompt for day 15, the actual prompt, is deceive. We're going to be talking about that just after the music. Okay, so Hannah, we're talking about deception, deceit, and all things downright dastardly and beginning with the letter D. So what comes to mind when I say deceit to yourself?
Well, when you say deception,
Yeah.
the thing that comes straight into my head is that song off the Succubus Club album called Deception by the Crook Shadows, I think it was.
Don't really remember it, if I'm completely honest.
And it got me wondering, well, you used to use background music on your games all the time. I often see you saving background music to playlists on YouTube, but I also know you don't tend to use it all that often.
Yeah, and I mean, part of the reason for that is I now use Discord to do the sort of audio-visual for when I'm running my games online, because most of my games run online, as you know. And without using sort of Discord bots and things like that, I find it a bit of a pain, to be honest. And with all the stuff that's already going on as a GM, like trying to keep track of the game, run the plots, reference my notes, rulebooks and stuff like that, I just don't want an extra thing that's going to be causing me trouble or causing me to faff around with it. And as I'm sure anyone who sort of has any knowledge or works in IT will know, the more IT and technology you introduce, the more likelihood is some of it's going to randomly not work and you have to spend time faffing around with it. Now, back in the day when we had like Google Hangouts and stuff like that, where it was a little bit easier to do that, I used a fair bit of background music and stuff like that in my game. But I wouldn't say I really leaned into it too much. I mean, obviously, like our friend like Simon, when he runs games, he's great at using background music. Most of his games are in person. He knows all the sort of background music he's got on various movie soundtracks, etc. So backwards, so he's got them all queued up into playlists, so at any time he can just be like, oh, I know the song that'll be good for this scene, boom, and he puts it on. Whereas me, having an awful memory, I tended, even when I was using it, just to create sort of quite sort of generic playlists, like oh, here's the generic Fantasy Village playlist, and I'd leave that running. Or I'd have like a generic combat or dungeon sort of playlist, and I'd just switch onto that playlist whatever we were doing. I wouldn't queue up a specific song for a specific bit of the game.
Except on the Dracula soundtrack, when you were using that for that Dungeons and Dragons game, and you had it lined up so that the track that had the wolf howls on it was playing while we were fighting the wolves.
Yeah, but
then you knew the track so well that every time there was going to be a wolf howl on the track, you'd cue it up, like you'd say, oh, the wolves are getting closer.
Yeah, that's a rare instance of, because I've watched the film and listened to the soundtrack so many times, that is a track that I knew well enough to do that. Whereas most of the time I don't. So it's like I've got loads of music queued up, from like fantasy forests to taverns, the sort of background noise of like streets and towns and stuff like that, but I don't know them quite as well enough to cue the soundtrack up. And to be honest, if I'm going to put effort into running my game, I'd rather put it into planning the session than sitting there for hours listening to soundtracks, working out when I can use them. And to be honest, I wouldn't remember most of it anyway. I only really remember the Bram Stoker's Dracula bit because I love the film so much, and you hear that soundtrack an awful lot if you've watched the film as many times as I have. So I mean, I think there are people who have the sort of mental bandwidth to make really good use of background music, and if there was a sort of low-tech, like fairly easy way I could do it in Discord, where I could guarantee that it wasn't going to break. And I mean, let's face it, Discord sound sort of fluctuations occur every single time there's a Windows update, so I'm not confident in that. But if there was a simple way of doing it, I probably would have some generic background music playing in the background, just at a low level, as a little bit of background stuff, but I definitely wouldn't want to put in the hours to like getting to know every last song on my playlist. I just don't have the mental bandwidth for that, or the memory. Some people who do, great, good for them, and it can add an awful lot to your game, but I think it's one of those nice optional extras if you can do it, rather than a necessity. So that's it from me and Hannah for this RPGaDay 2025 episode.
Bye.
Hopefully you'll join us in the next one, and until we see you again, take care, stay safe, and whenever you're playing, have fun.